because it kind of shows you a nice example of um, a sentence that has a very interesting subject and predicate that's very descriptive. So we'll watch this and then we'll talk about it.
Well, we've come a long way from the birds fly, and I think this sentence does a much better job of putting an image in the reader's mind. At sunset with wings outstretched, a pair. I can edit that out. So let's take one last look at this sentence and make sure everything is perfect, perfect, perfect. And we take a closer look at this sentence. I think seagulls is actually one word and not two. But everything else looks pretty close. I don't see any misspelled words, and all the commas seem to be where they need to be. The punctuation seems right. So I think once we fix this little mistake here, we are ready to frame this picture and call it done. At sunset, with wings outstretched, a pair of silhouetted seagulls emerge from the clouds and soar above the rolling tide. And that is our masterpiece sentence.
So the original sentence, I believe, was just the birds fly. And to go from that to this is, it's pretty vastly different. And, he did that by describing things better. And so let me just stop sharing that for a second, get back to my presentation. So in their simplest form, sentences are made of two parts, the subject and the predicate. The subject of the sentence tells us who or what the sentence is about, while the predicate tells us what happens, what the subject does. So those two parts are important. And if we look at that sentence, the birds fly, the birds is the subject, fly is the predicate. And then when it became that, much more descriptive sentence, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Let me see if I have it up here. At sunset, with wings outstretched, a pair of silhouetted seagulls, all of that is the subject. Let me share this. I'm sorry, because I want you to see what I'm saying. So the entire first part of the sentence, at sunset with wings outstretched, a pair of silhouetted seagulls, is the subject. The original sentence was the birds. So this is kind of in place of the birds is this whole subject here. And then everything after the verb is the predicate. So the predicate is emerge from the clouds and soar above the rolling tide. So in the original sentence, it was just fly. But this more descriptive predicate is emerge from the clouds and soar above the rolling tide. And all of this is in order to describe to your readers more effectively the scene that you're trying to paint with your words, basically. And so I took a stab at this, um, and I'm going to share with you guys the sentence I came up with. And you're sketching your subject and predicate with words. And you're trying to make the subject and action in the sentence easier to visualize. So my example is that I wrote because I am into birding, and there is a bird called a roseate spoonbill, and I'm going to show you a picture of them in just a moment. But the sentence that I wrote in order to kind of sketch the scene is their bubblegum pink plumage ruffling through the hot air, the roseate spoonbills spoon regurgitated food into their fledglings' mouths. So the entire subject of the sentence is their bubblegum pink plumage ruffling through the hot air, the roseate spoonbills is all the subject. And then the predicate starts with spoon, which is the verb of the sentence. Spoon regurgitated food into their fledglings' mouths. And you're going to see a picture here. This is what I was just describing. It is a very unique bird, and they are native to Florida. I saw some in the wild in Delray, Florida, and that was a really spectacular moment for me because this was my dream bird. Um, and they're very unique looking. They have that beautiful pink plumage. And sometimes people confuse them with flamingos, but they are not. Um, but anyway, I was trying to describe this scene with my words. I mean, if I were to simplify, I could just say the bird fed the baby bird. But there's a much more effective way to write this sentence, um, and you're trying to kind of sketch the sentence with words. So, um, that is the whole objective to writing masterpiece sentences. And so you would go back to the story, the short story that you wrote, and you would find a couple of simple sentences that could use work. And you would jazz the sentences up. You would make them more descriptive. You would use, you would appeal to the different senses, visual, sound, smell, taste, touch, um, in order to describe the scene. And that is the point of that lesson. That is the point of masterpiece sentences. Is that clear? After you make those changes, you need to indicate those changes by making them bold. So I wrote something just a few minutes ago, and let's see here. I was writing while you guys were writing. And so if I was to look at this and I wanted to find a sentence that was kind of plain, um, and I did my work to um, add more descriptive language, I would basically just highlight whatever changes I made. I'm pretending I changed this, and I would just mark it bold. And you're supposed to do 3 sentences, so of course I wouldn't highlight these sentences until I already went back and made those revisions and made a more interesting descriptive sentence. And one of the things that you could do is, I'm going to copy and paste this sentence that I have here. If you wanted to use, if you wanted help on writing a masterpiece sentence, you could use Google Gemini to help you. So sorry. I had just copied a sentence from my story and I need a masterpiece sentence. So I'm going to go into Google Gemini and I'm going to say, make this, whoops, a masterpiece sentence. So, sorry about the background noise. So the original sentence was, she ultimately wanted and arguably needed a partner. Sorry about that. Who would not only be her boyfriend, but also be a father figure to her children. And the masterpiece sentence that was suggested by Gemini is, she ultimately desired and perhaps more accurately needed a partner who would fulfill the complex dual role of romantic companion and committed father figure to her children.